All right. Hey, everyone. It's great to be here, and thanks for the introduction. And it's great to be sharing a little bit about myself and the journey that's led me to the realization that maximizing our impact on the landscape is one of the most important things we can be doing today. First off, when I say maximizing our impact, I want to be clear that about what I mean. We know some of the negative impacts that agriculture and other activities have had, and obviously this isn't what I'm advocating. What I mean is the kind of impact through regenerative solutions across the landscape that restores natural resources while at the same time enhancing farms and communities. Now, these solutions are here and they're constantly improving, so that means change can happen fast. We went from no GMO corn and soybeans to almost all GMO corn and soybeans in only a couple decades. So there's one example of a big change over a short time. But what if the effective use of cover crops increased at a similar rate? I think it can. So in 2006, I moved back to my family's corn and soybean farm with my wife and two boys. I didn't know exactly what I wanted in life at the time. Growing corn and soybeans wasn't quite it, but it seemed like a pretty good place to start. And I will say my dad's done a good job building the farm up from almost nothing, and it's above average in many ways. Recently, though, I've been starting to feel like I have at other crossroads in life where maybe I'm going in the right direction, but just not fast enough. This time, though, I'm like so many other farmers, like them, I'm in a great position to seek, to try out, and promote solutions. But I didn't always feel this way. From a young age, we're fed the narrative that we're the problem, so we should do less of nearly everything. We need to reduce our carbon footprint, just use less, trust the experts, because we're only going to screw it up ourselves. If you see yourself as separate from nature, it's easy to come to the conclusion that the best thing to do is to just do less. And this shaped my goals. Carving out my own little place and trying to stay out of the big evil system seemed like the best way. But now I realize that although nature can and eventually will fix whatever problems we create, it might take us out of the picture in the process, we can do this too because we're part of it. Biological systems for transporting and cycling the nutrients like herds of bison or the passenger pigeon are gone, and entire ecosystems depended on these. So we need to fill in the voids using whatever tools we have. In terms of what's around us, we all know what's good. We know clean water is good. We know the difference between good and bad smells. We can recognize a beautiful landscape. We don't need to know exactly how everything works to know when we're headed in the right direction. Direction's important. So I love walking around my 10 acres that I live on. I think it's ridiculously beautiful. I need to tune out some half-done projects scattered around. But it's satisfying to know that through my efforts, I've nearly eliminated runoff on this farm, and I'm producing a product there again. I know I could earn a living off of this land. It wouldn't be easy. I might fail, but I think it could be done. So why don't I work towards this? That's what I ask myself. I could quit the corn and soybean thing, quit the spraying, quit all the stuff about it I don't like. But I decided to shift focus. So I've lived for nearly a decade along one of the most polluted rivers in the country, and nothing I do on my 10 acres can change that. Without keeping at least one foot in the conventional ag world, it would be harder for me to maintain relationships and build relationships with people working in that system. And 85% of the total land area in my county is part of that system. We've simplified the landscape. That's something I heard recently from Jay Fuhrer. Unsimplifying it and reestablishing the natural patterns, it's going to take thoughtful, deliberate action and guidance to get started. And I think once we maximize our impact on the landscape, it's going to be us providing this support. Here's a few ways I think I've found these tools that can be helpful for pursuing this goal. I won't say too much about storytelling, but what I will say is if you can tell a story, you can sell something. And if it's a good enough story, others will repeat it for you. My farm's participating in some cover crop grazing research sponsored through SFA and the Pasture Project. And this makes a good story even for a non-farmer because it's so simple to explain the differences between this and a more conventional approach. We're using a resource that would otherwise sit exposed and unused and raising livestock with it, while at the same time improving it for the cropping season. We can use whatever is relevant in order to frame the concepts in our stories. And sadly, it's not hard to find examples of what happens when the land is mismanaged, like the Blue Earth River flooding this December. But this helps to illustrate the need for increased soil health. And once someone has clues to a solution, it then becomes very easy for them to visualize a path to that solution. Now, what about the path? This is my favorite concept I'll share today. It's using a systems approach. It's about the way we approach our goals. Now, we're not going to mess with the long-term, open-ended goals because I think these are what makes up our missions, our visions. A systems approach changes the way we look at the short-term goals, though. This concept was recently made popular by Scott Adams, the Dilbert comic strip creator guy, and I think he's pretty smart. What it means is focusing on putting in systems to keep us moving in the right direction, and don't worry so much about the short-term goals. You can imagine a field of dots. So you could connect these dots in a straight line towards some far-off goal, and that goal could change or even disappear by the time we actually get to it. Plus, you'd be missing all these other really cool dots along the way. A better plan would be to take a nonlinear path and realize that these dots tend to interact with each other, and one experience or opportunity builds from another. So, instead of, let's say on your farm, you pursue a goal to find 10 more customers, you could be setting up systems that generate customer interest as a consequence of doing something else productive. You might shake out a few new customers by repeating a known method, or you could say something like, I'll do some promotion through some new types of media instead, like maybe talking at an SFA conference. I'm using a systems approach right now because even though this doesn't move me in a linear way towards any specific goal, doing this sort of thing does improve my overall odds of making gains in the right direction. By doing this, I'm improving communication and organizational skills, stuff I really needed to work on. And if this topic resonates with anyone, I might get into some really great conversations and find out about some new opportunities or some new information. And if that doesn't happen, at least I got free admission. There's really no downside risk. If you're familiar with the 5 principles of soil health, they make an even better example of a systems approach. A few years back, I was at a meeting that Gary Zimmer does in my area every year, and he talks about all the cool stuff he's been up to. And it was right around this time I was just beginning to realize, it's just starting to click what's really possible once you have a vision and just go for it and don't talk yourself out of it. And Gary, he seems pretty successful, so I decided to go up and ask him afterwards, how do you do it? I just wanted to know, and I think I caught him a little off guard, but I'm not kidding. This is what he said. You need to talk really fast, if you know him. But then what he said was, I was in the right place at the right time. I think if you take a systems approach, you drastically increase your chances of being in that right place at the right time. Confidence is the last thing I'll mention. And I've heard confident people are perceived as more trustworthy. And I like to think of influence and anything else that arises out of trust like that as a form of currency almost for getting things done. We've all heard fake it till you make it. And I'm doing plenty of that right now. Sorry. It's helping though. I think the biggest confidence builder is through doing. This cover crop project I mentioned, I've been able to prove so much to myself through it. We can grow more than just corn, soybeans, and water hemp in our fields now. I know that. The cover crops didn't hurt the yield the first year. I have a yield map to prove it. And I got some experience working with cattle. There were more confidence building experiences all from doing this one project than I can mention right now. And even if we can't do something ourselves, it can build our confidence when we see someone else do it. So I think when people successful in agriculture say to get out there and get onto other people's farms, we should really take that to heart and listen. So to wrap this up, if anything I've said resonates with you, please look up more information or come talk to me. I listen to a crazy amount of podcasts in the spring and fall during field work, and it's just amazing what kind of information is out there, the quality of it. So one last story. On our farm, we're building a passive solar house to replace the old farmhouse. The old one's inefficient, full of wildlife, I'll call it, and just didn't fit very well. But despite all these problems, it has a good foundation, and we plan on reusing that foundation. So in our work, if we can build something that makes a good foundation, even if our house is kind of crap, at least we're leaving something else for someone to build off of. So I hope you've enjoyed this and found something useful. I'm not saying everyone should follow the same path I've chosen. Maximizing your impact on the landscape really depends on using your own strengths and leveraging whatever resources you have. If we look at what the land needs to function right again and look at how our own unique skills and talents can empower those around us, that's a good thing to do. Where you go from there is your decision. So how will you maximize your impact? Please ask yourself that every day. Thanks.